Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Leading the Charge. I'm 7 Sports Director Matt Bovee, alongside Dom Tibbetts. Following the Bills, what word do we want to use? Shellacking?
Clobbering?
Yeah, they got clobbered by the Chicago Bears yesterday, 38-0. They fall to 0-2 in the preseason. The beauty of the preseason is that the results of the games do not matter at all, but the individual performances do.
Certainly.
And I don't really think there's many good ones that came from yesterday. So there's a lot of different things we can get to. Obviously, we're going to answer a lot of your questions over the course of the next half hour. But as we reflect, right, 24 hours ago, game hadn't even started yet. I think there was a little bit of optimism of like, hey, maybe there's going to be some depth guys who show up in this game. Maybe the backups can at least kind of hold their own. None of that happened.
I think it was at one point, maybe in the second quarter, which is still not good, but I think our Leading the Charge analyst contributor, Joe Biscaglia, mentioned that the Chicago Bears had more points on the scoreboard than the Bills had offensive yards gained. I think at that point it was 28 points for the Bears, 22 offensive yards gained for the Buffalo Bills. So if that's any offensive picture of how that game went, there you have it. And then defensively, the score was 38-0. 38-0. So there you go. That's the big picture defensively for this team. Just they never got into a rhythm. I mean, that's just is going to plague you for the entire game. Mike White couldn't get it going, and then you thought maybe there's going to be a little bit of life when Mitch Trubisky came in offense in the second half. That did not happen at all. There was no life there. The defense came out in the first drive. Did you think for a moment to the opening kickoff, kind of a miscue from the special teams unit from Chicago, Bills get them pinned down, the 7-yard line? I'm thinking to myself, okay, go out, make a couple plays, see if the defensive front can force a little pressure on Caleb Williams. No. 93 yards in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, quick.
So it was just a bad start all around on whatever facet of the game you're talking about for the Bills.
It did not take long for the comments to start coming in specifically about the safety. So Gerard says, definitely need to bring in a safety. Rob echoes that. I'm more concerned about the safety position. Bishop hasn't had a full training camp for his first 2 years. It looks like he hasn't been caught up. That is where I feel like a good starting point is, because my biggest takeaway and my biggest reason to be concerned moving forward is the safety position, because I would have said that a month ago. That's not because of the game yesterday, but yesterday reinforced some of those concerns.
It was
that
a
I had.
problem for sure.
The safety position is not proven. There are a ton of questions there. The depth isn't great. And even the only one who you're pretty confident about, Taylor Rapp, is a good player, but he's not a great player. So a lot of this falls on Cole Bishop. And what we can expect from a player who has missed most of the summer, missed most of last summer, and only got a handful of games last year. And when he did, also looks like he needed a lot more reps. So that is a reason to be concerned for a player who just hasn't been on the field a lot.
I think Sean McDermott danced around that fact a little bit too last night, because he was asked, I think, 2 or 3 questions about Cole Bishop following the loss. And, I think he acknowledged, rightfully so, the fact that, he needs more reps. He needs more opportunities. He needs more live game action. That's something Cole Bishop hasn't been able to do in his very early short, now going into his second-year career here, because he's just not available. The injuries have plagued him. And he was on a rep count yesterday too. So he was only supposed to see 10 to 12, I think, plays from the defensive side of the ball. So that's just more reps, more opportunities missed. It puts more pressure because you don't have Taylor Rapp out there. I mean, DeMar Hamlin had a really rough opening series too. So you have some questions there. We talked about it last night, you and I, on the wrap following the game that you can find over on WKBW.com and our YouTube page too. But there's no competition pushing out Cole Bishop at this point. Maybe you thought like DeMar Hamlin takes another step. Derek Forrest, the free agent signing from this offseason, maybe he was going to put more competition on a guy like Cole Bishop. There's nothing competition-wise that is pushing Cole Bishop out. So I think the Bills have to just sit with it, deal with the growing pains, because I don't know what their option is. There really isn't a better one, at least to me, that is on this roster right now.
The interesting name is Jordan Hancock, but I think that's a lot more of the unknown than it is of, hey, this is what we know he can do. Sure. But it's just like, hey, could it really be any worse? And I don't know the answer to that. Cam Lewis is a player who they'd like, but I don't think that's a player who's ready to take starting safety reps in
I also think
NFL.
With Cam, I was thinking about this too, is like with Cam, I just think they like him as that utility role. I also don't know if they like pigeonholing Cam Lewis, whether he has to go step up and play cornerback or step up and play a little nickel or go play safety. I think they like having the freedom of Cam Lewis being versatile in the secondary.
Yeah, so then it brings you to the question of, would they go on the outside? Would they bring somebody else in? But that's a really complicated and layered question, and almost more of a like philosophical debate, because Cole Bishop was a second-round pick last year, missed most of last summer, barely got any snaps.
Nope.
So you don't want to give up on a second-round pick so early on in their career, especially one who they were really excited to get. Like, you think back to the draft last year. Apparently, the Bills were trying to move up for Cole Bishop. They really, really liked the player. Maybe there's more there. I mean, realistically, there's probably more there. He just got back out onto the field. So it feels like these next 3 weeks are pivotal. I don't think they're going to go on the outside, though, and bring in somebody who would absolutely start. Like, the name that people are talking about is Justin Simmons, who played in Atlanta last year, had some incredible seasons with the Broncos the years before that. That guy's not coming in to be a backup. That guy's coming in to legitimately start right away. And if you do that, then you're pushing the timeline another year down the road with Cole Bishop. And I just don't think this team is going to do that.
I also just don't believe that Brandon Beane is getting ready, to your point there, too, to like go take a second-round pick who is going into his second year and be like, you know what? One more year of development. I also think there is something to be said about just being thrown into the fire. I do think that if you're going to have a performance like Cole Bishop did, or really anybody on this team for that matter, but let's talk about Cole, this is the moment. This is the time that you want to have that performance. This is a game that means nothing result-wise. The individual performances matter, to your point. But if you're going to have Cole Bishop mess up, I think if you're a Bills fan, you'd rather have this discussion after the second preseason game of the year than week whatever, 8 or 9, whenever it was when they played the Texans last year, and Nico Collins burned them on that huge touchdown. Like, this is the opportunity, I think, where Cole Bishop can kind of compartmentalize the mistakes that were made, look back at the film, get healthier, start to increase that rep count as he gets healthier. And then, you kind of just have to have a little sit and waiting game to see if he's going to progress and develop the way you need to be a safety on this team.
One of our buddies, Juan, who watches every single week, has asked a couple questions about Trey Hendrickson. Juan, we'll talk about that either coming up in the next segment or during the commercial break, because I do think it's an interesting discussion. I don't want to give away what I think is going to, what I'm going to say, but whatever. We'll answer that question coming up. But I want to kind of put a bow on the safety position, because the other name that we haven't really talked about is Damar Hamlin. And Damar Hamlin is a player that obviously is a household name for a multitude of reasons. I just don't know if he's 100% on the roster. I think he's still got a stronger chance of making it than missing it, just because of the experience he has. But it hasn't been a great summer for him. And I mean, the preseason games, once again, they're still preseason games. I know we don't want to put too much weight into them, but I don't know if I'm dancing around my words a little bit, because I don't want to be too harsh. They can absolutely do better than Damar Hamlin. That doesn't mean he is not a useful piece. I just don't know if they're just going to run it back with a player like that.
It's kind of like, I don't want to keep mincing up players here, but it's kind of like if we get into like Joe Andreessen, which I'm sure we will in a second. Damar Hamlin has a role on this team, and I think in the right role with a limited amount of responsibilities, Damar Hamlin does very well with this Bills team. But the fact that you're getting this stage where if Taylor Rapp or Cole Bishop goes down and Damar Hamlin is the starting safety for this team,
that's
valid. That's a problem. And I don't think there's any really easy way to say it for a guy who obviously has been through so much, who Bills Mafia has grown to love over the years. And there's no easy way to say it, but it will not be good for the Bills defense if Damar Hamlin is out there taking starting safety snaps. You just don't need that. But the counter to that is there is a role, I think, for Damar Hamlin. Same with a lot of other guys that you take a little bit more off their plate. But right now, it's the same argument with Cole Bishop, with Damar, Matt. There's nobody pushing him out for more reps. There's nobody out there who I could be like, oh, yeah, maybe Jordan Hancock. But that's also the rookie discussion, too, in of itself.
A lot will depend on how many safeties they decide to keep. Do they keep 4 safeties? Do they keep 5 safeties? Cut down day for the Bills to get to their 53-man roster is a week from tomorrow. That is next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. I mean, this question from Michael, when are they going to cut Damar Hamlin? If they were going to do it, it would be next Tuesday before 4 o'clock. I think he's on the roster.
I think so, too.
I think he's on the roster more as like a special teams contributor and the 4th or 5th safety.
Yeah, the special teams aspect helps for sure.
But if he does have to play any significant amount of snaps for the defense, that is absolutely a reason to be concerned. All right, we teased it a little bit. The Trey Hendrickson conversation, that is something we will talk about coming up on the other side of the break. If you're watching on TV, if you're watching on the web chat, well, we're going to just keep talking for the next few minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. So the Bills lose to the Chicago Bears 38-0 in their second preseason game last night. Went well into the evening. It was way too long for a preseason game. Feeling a little bit tired today. And I can also tell you that I'm sure the Bills coaching staff was not very happy with what they saw from their team last night. Here's what Sean McDermott, or some of what Sean McDermott had to say after the loss.
Got a lot of work to do. That's very clear. It doesn't matter who's out there, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, whoever it is, we expect them to perform, and we expect our level of performance to be much better than that. So you just break it down. Line of scrimmage, we didn't win the line of scrimmage. Fundamentally, we weren't good enough. Too many penalties. We get out there and playing against their ones, we expect to compete with them, and that wasn't the case early. And then our twos then who were out there competing against their twos, and our threes against their threes, it didn't get much better. So we got to look at it, figure some things out, and evaluate some of the guys as well, and see where we stand there, and a lot of work to get done this week as we move forward here. So I thought we made some momentum, had some momentum coming off that practice, which I thought was a good practice for us. Tonight, however, not even close. So.
Not even close, indeed.
Yeah, right?
Not even close. I would just say not close. Not even say the even, just not close at all.
So that was Sean McDermott following the game yesterday, and one of the things he talked about was how they lost at the line of scrimmage. Now, the Bills put a ton of resources into especially the defensive line over the course of the last several months. And then the fact that we're still talking about did they do enough, and then we've got a question like the one we have from Juan, is Matt and Dom, what would you guys be willing to give up for Trey Hendrickson? It is a really interesting conversation that he's available.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. He is available allegedly, even though the Bengals have said that they don't intend to trade him.
Right.
That doesn't mean they won't. They would just need to really have their socks knocked off. Also, a contending team in the AFC trying to make another deal with a contending team in the AFC seems really, really unlikely. So if you're the Bills, I think you would have to really, really pay.
Yeah.
And then you would need to give him an extension. And the Bills have about as the least amount of cap space.
No, the lowest, the 32nd out of 32 NFL teams in total cap space.
With the projected top 51 salary cap, right? Yep. Because when they go down to 53-man rosters, the top 51 cap hits count. When they get to that point, the Bills have the least cap space in the NFL. So all of that said, if for some reason Trey Hendrickson was available, what would you be willing to give up for him?
I think you give up a first-round pick, next year's first-round pick. You'd have to. I think that's the only thing the Bengals would take. You'd probably give up.
Apparently, the reports are that they want a 1 and they want a defensive player. Doesn't have to be a pass rusher.
Yes. So you're probably, the easiest point is to go to AJ Epinesa, but I could also see them, I don't know. Do they you shop around he doesn't have enough value, but who do you go in the linebacker room? You're not going to move on from probably Milano or Terrell Bernard at that point. And then the secondary, they're clearly not moving on from anybody. So the easiest for me to think is AJ Epinesa, but you're also going to have to probably package something else in there with AJ Epinesa. The trade is it's three-sided because you have three elements. One team, the Bengals in this case, are probably going to get a lot more than they want. So think of it like equal sides for the Bengals there. The Bills probably on the acute side of this. 3 triangle trade, 2 equal sides. It's kind of like an isosceles triangle.
All right, so the backstory here is that Dom asked for a word to get into the show, and I told him isosceles. And, it was clunky, but you got there. You pulled it off. So kudos to you. I just don't think that they would trade for Trey Hendrickson. I think he'd be a really, really nice piece for the Bills.
I don't know how the Bills do it. It's just in a hypothetical situation, it would require so much that I just don't.
I am the Bills. I am not, even in this window, I am not giving up a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. I really think that you need those pieces, those assets, to get players under cost-controlled contracts while you are so tight to the cap. And with Josh Allen getting all of the money that he is and all of the other contract extensions that they have given out, you need players who aren't going to destroy your salary cap.
Yeah.
And that is the luxury of having these first-round picks. Now, it also means you have to hit on them. We don't know if Max Hairston is going to be a hit or if he's going to be a strikeout, right? Still too early to tell. I don't think anybody's feeling super confident with Dalton Kincaid, the last first-round pick they made before Max Hairston from a couple of years ago. So they got a lot of things that they need to figure out. I think theoretically, Trey Hendrickson would be awesome. I just don't think it's very realistic.
I just don't even know. You bring Trey Hendrickson in, you'll find a way to get him acclimated. You'll find a way to put him in the scheme where he's going to excel. And he's just such a playmaker and such a game wrecker in that sense. So if he comes to Buffalo, not saying he wouldn't be effective, he very much would be.
For sure.
He would make this defense better. But also there's just the schematics of figuring all that out and where he would fit on this roster right now. When you, like, to your point, you've spent this offseason adding so much young size and so much young depth in that defensive line unit too. So you're waiting for them to develop more. You're putting another guy behind them. And then, like, I think of a guy like Connor McGovern and all these other maybe like offensive linemen down the road. Like in a couple of years, Osiris Torrance is going to need a contract extension.
Next year.
You're going to need that money and all that to save and protect your franchise quarterback, the reigning MVP. So I thought that's a good point too. It's just, how do you make that work when you're also considering the future of the franchise? The Bills go, like, I always see like the big splash moves. You go get a Trey Hendrickson. It's very like when the LA Rams went all in, chips in the middle to go win the Super Bowl a few years back.
Miller.
Yeah, like that's the chips all in. Like, there's consequences that Brandon Beane has said numerous times. Remember him saying it at the NFL Combine this year. There are consequences that come when you put all your chips in the middle. You're going to go through a couple lean years afterwards. That's something he has said. As long as Josh Allen is quarterback, the Bills will not go through lean years. So that is what I think why Trey Hendrickson just will not come to Buffalo. And at the end of the day, on a financial fit, it just doesn't make sense.
All right, interesting question from Joe here about Curtis Samuel. We will get to that coming up on the other side of the commercial break. Here's a question from Buffalo Wingware. Again, a week from tomorrow is cut down day. How many players have to be cut? So the Bills have to go from 90 men on their roster right now to 53 men on their roster. The interesting layer to all of this, though, is that guys like Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi will start the year suspended for 6 games. So if they make the team, I mean, they're going to be sidelined for 6 weeks. Those roster spots do not count. So the Bills can keep 2 players in their place, but then when they are eligible to come back from the suspension, then the Bills would have to find 2 players on their 53-man roster to move on from. They also have spots that they can use, 2 spots for a player to go on IR and miss the first 4 weeks of the season. The easy names to consider there is someone like Max Hairston. If he's not ready to come back, you would have him make the 53-man roster, then put him on IR. His roster spot would go away for 4 weeks while he's coming back, and then you could take someone else to keep them on their roster. So there are some things that they can certainly do, and we'll figure out what they end up pulling off a week from tomorrow. All right, on the TV side, we are going to take one more final commercial break, and we will continue the conversation online, so we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of our Lead in Charge preseason edition on this Monday evening for you. A couple minutes ago, Joe asked this question on X. Do you think Curtis Samuel will make the roster with his injuries and missing so much of camp? I'm not sure. And then that question was followed up with a question from Rob. Should we be concerned with Elijah Moore dropping some passes? So it's really interesting because I think there are a couple players who are competing for a few roster spots. The way I have thought of this in my head, if they keep 5 wide receivers, the names we know that are making the team are Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer. Those are the guys who are making the team for sure.
Yep.
Then I think it comes down to 3 players for 2 spots. Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Tyrell Shavers. Those are the 3 names that I think are ultimately going to be up for 2 spots. So right now, how do you think it plays out? I mean, you have Joe's question about Curtis Samuel. You have Rob's comment about Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, it's a shoe-in for any of these 3 guys.
The easiest cop-out is, do the Bills keep 6 wide receivers? Because if they do, that's your 6 wide receivers right there. I don't think there's anybody.
But do you keep a specialist then, like Laviska Shenault, because he's going to play special teams, and that's not going to be the case for a player like Curtis Samuel or Elijah Moore. Yeah. So that's where it gets a little bit more interesting.
So if it's 5, I think it's a very good question. And when we started training camp, I would have absolutely told you that it would have been probably Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore. We haven't gotten to see any of Curtis Samuel. So my confidence on Curtis Samuel is down just because I don't know what to expect. It's kind of like when Sean McDermott talks about him. I don't know what one is giving you out there. Tyrell Shavers has put together another really good training camp. I don't know how many more times the Bills need to look and see his performance and say, hey, maybe we give this guy a shot. He's kind of got everything we need as a receiver. Let's give him a whirl here. And then, listen, I've been on the Elijah Moore train. I thought he would be here as a free agent, and it happened. But he has not flashed. He has not shined in his first 2 preseason games. I think it's a very, very tough situation. If you had to go the snap of the finger from what we talked about last night too, because financially they're way more obligated to Curtis Samuel, I think they would keep Curtis Samuel for another season. And I think they finally give Tyrell Shavers a shot, and they probably are cutting Elijah Moore.
I would think right now, Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel, and they cut Tyrell Shavers. And it's a really interesting debate.
It's tough.
It is tough. Here's a fun little tidbit. Guess who's, well, because I'm asking the question, you're going to know. Do you know that Elijah Moore is younger than Tyrell Shavers?
Yeah.
So
Elijah Moore is 25?
He's 25.
Yeah.
Tyrell Shavers turned 26 today. Happy birthday, by the way, as we're talking about whether or not you're going to make the 53-man roster.
He's angry
I think
watching this show
First
right
off,
now.
Tyrell Shavers, awesome dude. Just like really, really good guy.
For sure.
I think that he is a player who they almost know what he is, and they know what his ceiling is. And I don't think there would be many teams clamoring to immediately sign him to their 53-man roster. I think you would have an easier time getting a player like Tyrell Shavers to your practice squad and then breaking glass in case of emergency and getting him into the game. Now, that's what they did last year. He had 1 catch in the preseason for a 69-yard touchdown. It was a really, really nice play. But I also realize that Elijah Moore is coming off of a season where he was a legitimate producer for Cleveland. And I feel like if you need this guy to play offense, you like the upside of Elijah Moore. So that's just kind of my
thing. And as somebody who is like, I've defended Elijah Moore, and I still can, even though despite what I just said, I want to see more from Elijah Moore, because I also just want to see him work with the ones more in the game. I mean, that comes down to like, what can Josh Allen do on an offense where it sparks Elijah Moore? He would have gotten, let's just say Josh Allen plays, he would have been in the Khalil Shakir role. And I think Josh Allen and Elijah Moore are 2 guys that could easily build chemistry and repertoire between each other.
And that's the other thing too, is of course we're basing this off of the preseason games, but there was also the joint practice with the Bears where reportedly Elijah Moore had a really strong day. So we shall see. All right, 1 preseason game left for the Bills. Saturday, 7:30 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cut down day is Tuesday at 4:30. We'll have another leading the charge between those coming up a week from today. That is Dom Tibbetts. I'm Matt Beauvais. For Michelle and Julie in the control room. Have a lovely rest of your night.